My office will prosecute her and seek to hold her accountable for her actions.
A nurse in Pennsylvania accused of murdering patients. How prosecutors say her medical care turned into a crime. Welcome back to Sidebar here on Law and Crime. I'm Angenette Levy. Heather Pressdee has been charged with 2 counts of homicide for the deaths of 2 men in her care last December. Pressdee also faces an attempted murder charge as she's accused of trying to kill another patient in August of 2022. Attorney General Michelle Henry described how she believes Pressdee killed the patients when announcing her arrest.
These charges stem from her conduct while working as a registered nurse at Quality Life Services, a skilled nursing facility. While there, she administered large doses of insulin to 3 individuals. All 3 individuals were her patients. 2 of them passed away as a result of her conduct. The other one fortunately survived.
One of the men died on Christmas Day of last year. The other died on December 4th, earlier that month. The Attorney General says 2 of the men in this case were not diabetic. A criminal complaint charging Pressdee with the crimes claims she has been disciplined in the past for abusive behavior toward patients and staff, and that resulted in her resigning or being fired from other nursing facilities. The complaint says Pressdee claimed one of the men was in COVID isolation and asked her to, quote, kill him. It goes on to say Pressdee felt bad for another patient who had bad quality of life, so she injected him with insulin. She allegedly said the third patient also had poor quality of life, so she injected him as well. Joining me is Dr. Tim Gallagher. He is a medical examiner for the state of Florida. Dr. Gallagher, thanks for coming on Sidebar. We appreciate it.
Always a pleasure, Angenette. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. Your thoughts about this case? It sounds pretty disturbing.
Well, it certainly is. You know, we have people go to the medical profession to help people get through their illnesses, not cause illness and death, which is what this case is based on.
The allegation here is that Nurse Pressdee injected these patients with fatal doses of insulin. It's a lot of insulin. I think in one case it was 60 units. One of the 3 patients wasn't even a diabetic. So, I mean, is this an open and shut case? We have a statement from her to law enforcement about injecting these patients.
Well, I don't believe it's an open and shut case. Insulin is very difficult to determine in a patient, whether they've overdosed on it or not. Basically, because the body makes its own insulin. So everybody has different insulin levels. So the difficulty would be in determining, where did this insulin come from? Is it insulin that the body made itself, or is it the type of insulin that was injected into them by the nurse? There are certain tests that can differentiate the natural insulin that the body makes from the pancreas and the type of insulin that is given to you from a bottle or from a nurse. The type of insulin that is injected into you typically is mixed with certain stabilizing chemicals that can be traced back using lab tests that can be traced, from lab results. So one of the lab results that we'll be looking for in somebody who has been given a lot of exogenous insulin, and exogenous meaning coming from outside of the body, is a test called the C protein. And only insulin that is exogenous has this C protein stabilizing molecule attached to it. So they'll have to take the blood, do the C protein test on it. And if that value is high, then we know that insulin came from outside of the body.
This has me questioning whether or not investigators are going to go back and look through her career. She's apparently been disciplined many times for acting abusively toward patients and coworkers, and has resigned and fired from many positions. If you're an investigator, you're a medical examiner, if this is your case, do you recommend to the state police or whomever's investigating, hey, We need to do a deep dive here and see what's going on with this woman and her prior patients.
Oh, absolutely. And what we'll need is a court order if to exhume any bodies that we thought were a result of her action. So anyone who died recently or in the past that we feel died as a result of her actions, we will have to go to the grave site, exhume the body, meaning remove the body from the gravesite, and do analytical tests on their tissue to look for this exogenous insulin. And then when we find it, we'll have to be able to determine how much of it is in her body. Now, these things do degrade over time. So if we were to do a deep dive into this, we would have to exhume the most recently deceased bodies that we don't have a C protein test for.
She claims, according to the criminal complaint in this case, that one of the patients asked her to kill him because he was in bad shape in COVID isolation. She claims the other two, basically, she didn't think they had good quality of life, so she just injected them with insulin. Have you seen this type of case before in your career? Have you handled something like this?
As I can't say that I have, and it's not really up to a nurse to determine, who lives or who dies. It's not really even up to a doctor to determine who lives or who dies. This is a decision that the family is very involved with. Or if there's no family present, social services are very involved with. This is not one person's decision to make, and it's certainly not one person's decision to enact to kill somebody or to kill a patient, without going through the proper channels. Not that there is a proper channel, but this is a discussion that heavily involves the family and social services, and in a lot of cases, religious services as well. So it's not up to one person to make this decision and act upon it.
Yeah, I think the first part of the Hippocratic Oath that you would know best is do no harm. I'm sure nurses take a similar oath with their patients that you're supposed to be caring for them, not ending their lives. What do you expect to see next in this case?
Well, as we discussed, the more evidence that you have, the greater the chance for prosecution. Now, this particular nurse seems to have a bit of a checkered or troubled past. And so, of course, that would have to be introduced into the testimony as well. But if we can look at the number of deaths that occurred during her shift, and then compare that to the number of hospital deaths that occurred when she wasn't there, if we see that the number of hospital deaths are higher when she was working, then that certainly is damning evidence that she is contributing to the demise of some of these patients. Now there are also drug dispensary machines that will record who requested the drug, how much of the drug was distributed, and at what time that happened. So we can go through all of those records and see if she had gone to a drug dispensing machine. In some hospitals, it's called a Pyxis or a Pyxis type machine. We can go to that machine, interrogate its memory, and see who ordered the drug, who received the drug, which nurse received the drug, and who and which patient was administered that drug. So there was a very long digital paper trail, so to speak, of where these drugs go. And if we can determine that she was the one who ordered it through the Pyxis and she was the one that administered it to the patient, then that certainly would be more damning evidence should this case go to trial.
And I don't know if a lot of people realize that when nurses go to give a medication, they sometimes have to have a barcode they have to scan or some type of key card that they scan in order to access these things. It's all controlled by a computer these days, and it's all logged.
That is true. So the nurse would have to use her key card to access the machine, and then each patient on their armband has a barcode or a QR code, some type of code, and that would also have to be scanned before the drug is given. And this way we can monitor throughout the hospital who is getting what drug, how much are they getting, and at what time is that happening.
Well, Dr. Tim Gallagher, we know that Erin Pressdee is innocent until proven guilty, but the statements attributed to her in the criminal complaint are certainly indicative that she did this. She seems to have confessed to this. We appreciate your time on this important story and your expertise. Thanks so much.
Well, thank you very much. It was a pleasure.
That's it for this edition of Law and Crime's Sidebar podcast. You can listen to and download Sidebar on Apple, Spotify, Google, and wherever else you get your podcasts. And of course, you can always watch it on Law and Crime's YouTube channel. I'm Angenette Levy, and we will see you next time.